My son hired guards to block my entrance to the wake. He cannot enter. Those are orders from his own son. They said when I wanted to say goodbye to Emily, my beloved wife of 36 years of marriage. 2 men dragged me out by force while I screamed her name. That same night I made a phone call, and that call would change everything. If this story moves something inside you, subscribe. Every day we share real stories that could be yours. Tell us where you are watching us from. My name is Robert Miller. I am 68 years old, and what I am about to tell you changed my life forever. I had arrived at Street Michael Funeral Home in Chicago that Friday morning, wearing the black suit that Emily had ironed for me the last time she was home. I carried in my hands the flowers she loved most, white roses from the garden we planted together 20 years ago. My heart beat with that mixture of pain and love that only someone who has lost their lifelong partner knows. I thought I could finally say goodbye to her, but when I reached the main door, there were 2 men dressed in black, standing like soldiers. They were big, serious, with those earpieces that bodyguards use in movies. At first I thought it was for some important funeral, maybe some politician or well-known businessman. I approached naturally, as I had done 1,000 times in my life. As the man who built 3 companies with his own hands, I never imagined those guards were there for me. I never imagined my own son had put them there to humiliate me. "Excuse me, sir. Where are you going?" The tallest one asked me when I tried to enter. His voice was cold, professional, as if he were doing any ordinary job. "I am here for the wake of my wife, Emily Miller," I answered, showing him the flowers. The man looked at his partner. Then he took a folded paper out of his pocket. He opened it slowly, as if it were a judicial sentence. "I am very sorry, sir, but you cannot enter. It is a family order." Those words fell on me like a bucket of ice water in the middle of winter. "What do you mean, I cannot enter? I am Robert Miller. Emily is my wife. We have been married for 36 years. My voice began to break, but not from sadness. It was from rage, from disbelief, from a humiliation I had never felt in my life. The guard did not flinch. "Sir, I have specific orders from the son of Mrs. Emily, Michael Miller. You cannot enter this wake." Every word was like a nail driven into my chest. My own son, my only descendant, the boy I held in my arms when he was born. At that moment, people we knew appeared. The Johnsons, our lifelong friends. Linda, the neighbor who took care of us when Michael was little. My partners from the construction company. Men who had respected me for decades. They all saw me standing there, arguing with the guards like an intruder. Their faces changed when they realized what was happening. Some looked down, others greeted me with pity, as if I were terminally ill. The shame rose up my neck like fire. 36 years of a respectable marriage, and my son was turning me into a spectacle in front of all of Chicago. "Please, let me pass. I just want to see my wife one last time." I did not care about begging anymore. Emily was in there, cold, alone, waiting for me. We had promised to be together until death do us part, but they would not even let me keep that promise. The younger guard seemed uncomfortable. "Sir, we understand your pain, but we cannot make exceptions. If you want, you can call Mr. Michael to resolve this. Call my own son to ask for permission to see my dead wife." The humiliation was complete. It was then that Michael appeared at the door, dressed in an expensive suit that I had paid for. Arm in arm with Sarah, his wife. He was 39 years old, but at that moment he seemed like a stranger to me. His eyes were dry, without a single tear for his dead mother. Sarah looked at me with contempt, as if I were trash on the street. "Dad," Michael said with a voice I had never heard from him. "We already talked about this. We do not want problems here. Go home." It was not a request. It was an order. From my own son. The son Emily raised with so much love. "Michael, please. She is my wife. She is your mother. Let me in even for 5 minutes." My voice sounded pathetic, I know. But at that moment I did not care about dignity. I just wanted to touch Emily's hand one more time, to tell her I loved her until her last breath, to ask for her forgiveness for not being able to protect her from this betrayal. Michael looked at me as if I were an annoying beggar. "Dad, you are making a scene. Mom would not want to see you like this. Better leave before we have to call the police." Sarah smiled behind him, a small smile, cruel, of triumph. The guards moved closer. One of them touched my arm gently, but firmly. "Sir, it would be better if you leave. We do not want to have problems." I looked around and saw that everyone was watching us. There were elderly people who had known Emily since she was a girl, relatives who had come from out of state, workers from my companies who had respected me for decades, everyone watching how my son kicked me out of my own wife's funeral as if I were a stray dog. 2 guards dragged me out by force while I screamed her name. "Emily, forgive me." I walked to my car with trembling legs, the white roses still in my hands. People on the street looked at me with curiosity, wondering what that old man had done to get kicked out of a funeral. I sat in the driver's seat and cried like I had not cried since I was a child. I cried for Emily, who was in there unable to defend me. I cried for the 36 years of marriage that my son had trampled on in 5 minutes. I cried for the humiliation, for the betrayal, for the hatred I saw in the eyes of my own blood. But while I drove back to the empty house, something changed in my chest. The sadness was transforming into something colder, more calculated. Michael thought he had defeated me, that he had taken everything that mattered to me. But there was something he did not know, something Emily and I had planned years ago, when we still believed our son had a heart. That night, when I got home, I would make a call that would change everything, a call that my son would remember for the rest of his miserable life. Emily and I met on a Tuesday in April 1986, in the office of a small construction company, where she worked as a secretary. I was 30 years old, she was 25, and I had arrived there with a crazy project, to build decent housing for working families with a loan that barely covered the materials. Emily welcomed me with a smile that lit up the whole room. "Seriously, you want to build houses for humble people?" she asked me. "That is what I know how to do," I answered her, and from that day on we were never apart. The first years were pure struggle. Emily left her job to help me with the accounts, the contracts, the negotiations with the banks. We worked from 6 in the morning until 11 at night, in a tiny office that smelled of reheated coffee and unfulfilled dreams. She managed the numbers with a precision that amazed me, and I laid the bricks with my own hands when we were short on workers. "Robert," she would tell me when I arrived exhausted, "we are building something big, something that is going to last forever." Emily always saw the future when I only saw problems. Michael was born in October 1983. After 3 years of trying to have children, Emily had lost 2 pregnancies before, and when the boy finally arrived healthy and screaming, we cried with happiness for hours. He was tiny, wrinkled, perfect. "This son will be our pride," Emily told me while she nursed him for the first time. "He is going to be better than the 2 of us together." I held him in my arms, and I promised him he would have everything we did not have. Education, opportunities, a life without lack. I never imagined that so much love would turn into so much hate. During the 90s, the business grew like foam. Emily sacrificed her own dreams to take care of Michael and manage the administrative part of the companies, while I was at the site supervising. She was at home helping the boy with homework, cooking for the workers who sometimes stayed late, doing the accounting on the dining room table. Sundays were sacred. Church with the family, homemade lunch, walks in the park. "Dad, when I grow up, I want to be like you," Michael told me when he was 10 years old. Emily winked at me from the kitchen. We built the first company in 1991, Miller Construction. Emily insisted that my last name be the only one on the sign. "You are the one who puts up the face and the risks," she said. "I am happy being your silent partner." But she was never silent. She was my advisor, my confidant, the one who slowed me down when I wanted to expand too fast, and the one who pushed me when I was afraid to grow. The nights I came home worried about some difficult project, she made me chamomile tea and listened to me for hours. "Problems are solved one by one, my love," she would tell me. "Tomorrow we will see everything more clearly." By 2005, we already had 3 companies: construction, real estate development, and an engineering consultancy. Michael was 22 years old and studying business administration at the most expensive university in Chicago. He was smart. I do not deny that. But he was starting to show an arrogance that worried Emily. "Robert, the boy thinks everything is handed to him," She told me when Michael arrived in rented cars or spent fortunes on designer clothes. Maybe we should teach him to value what he has. But I thought it was normal. After all, I had worked all my life so he could have those opportunities. The first sign that something was wrong was when Michael met Sarah in 2007. She came from an old money family, the kind that believe they are superior because they inherited what others built. From the first day, Sarah looked at Emily with contempt. "Your mom did not go to college," she asked Michael at a family dinner. "It is just very noticeable that she is working class." Emily stayed silent, but I saw how her eyes watered. That night she told me, "Robert, that woman is going to bring trouble." She was right, as always. The years passed and the distance between Michael and us grew like an abyss. He graduated with honors, started working in the companies, but always with an attitude that he deserved more than what we gave him. Sarah poisoned him constantly. "Your parents are ordinary. We deserve to have our own money. Why do you have to ask your dad for permission for everything?" Emily noticed it and suffered in silence. "We are losing our son," she told me, "and I do not know how to get him back." In 2019, Michael married Sarah in a wedding that cost more than my first house. Emily and I paid for everything. The church, the hall, the honeymoon in Europe. Even Sarah's dress that was worth $5,000. During the ceremony, Michael thanked us in his speech, but in a cold way. Formal, as if we were sponsors and not his parents. Sarah did not even look at us when they said "I do." Emily cried during the whole party, but not from joy. "I feel like today we lost our son forever," she whispered to me while we danced. Again, she was right. The last years before Emily's illness were strange. Michael came home less and less, always with excuses, that he had meetings, that Sarah was busy, that they preferred to spend Sundays alone. Sarah complained about everything, the food, the decoration, our topics of conversation. "Do you always talk about work?" she said with annoyance. "Do you not have more interesting hobbies?" Emily cooked his favorite dishes, but they arrived late and ate in a hurry. "We have social commitments." That was always the excuse. The day the doctor gave us Emily's diagnosis, in January 2022, the first thing she told me was, "Call Michael. I want him to know his mom loves him, no matter how things have been lately." I called immediately. "Dad, I am in an important meeting." "Can it wait?" I answered him. "It is about your mother. Michael, it is urgent." "Okay, but make it fast." When I told him Emily had terminal cancer, there was a long silence. Then, "Is the doctor sure? Have you asked for a second opinion?" As if it were a problem that could be solved with business efficiency. That night he did not come to see her. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Those were the words Dr. Reynolds told us on Tuesday, January 16th, 2022. "She has between 3 and 6 months left. Mr. Miller, we can do chemotherapy to buy time, but I must be honest, it will be more for our peace of mind than for a real cure." Emily squeezed my hand when she heard that. She did not cry. My wife never cried when things got difficult. "When do we start?" she asked with that firm voice I had known for 36 years. "Robert and I are not going to give up that easily." That same afternoon, I canceled all my business meetings. I called my managers and told them that, until further notice, I would be completely dedicated to Emily. "But Mr. Miller, we have the bid for the downtown project," said Mark, my right-hand man. "Let Michael handle it," I answered. That is what he studied administration for, and that is why he has been working with us for 5 years. It was the perfect moment for my son to show what he was made of. It was his chance to rise to the occasion when his family needed him most. The first days of chemotherapy were terrible. Emily vomited every 2 hours. She had completely lost her appetite, and her beautiful hair started falling out in clumps. I slept in a chair next to her hospital bed, holding her hand when the pain woke her up in the early morning. "Robert," she would tell me in those moments of lucidity, "promise me you are going to take care of Michael when I am not here. Promise me you will not hold a grudge if he does not know how to handle this." I promised her everything she asked, but inside I was starting to worry about our son's absence. Michael appeared at the hospital 3 days after the diagnosis. A Friday afternoon, dressed in a work suit and checking his phone constantly. "How are you, Mom?" he asked Emily, but without getting too close to the bed, as if cancer were contagious. Emily smiled at him with all the strength she had left. Better now that you are here. My love. Michael stayed exactly 15 minutes. Dad, Sarah is waiting for me. We have a dinner with some important investors. He left without kissing her, without hugging her, without promising her he would return soon. Weeks passed, and Michael's absence became an open wound for Emily. Why does my son not come? She would ask me when the medications had her confused. Did I do something wrong? Is he angry with me? That he was busy with projects? That Sarah had social commitments? That he came at night when she was sleeping? White lies to protect the heart of a woman who was dying and just wanted to see her son one more time. In February, Emily had a strong crisis. The doctors told us it was probably the end. I called Michael crying on the phone. Son, your mom is dying. You have to come now. His answer froze my blood. Dad, I understand it is difficult, but Sarah is 3 months pregnant, and we cannot expose ourselves to hospital germs. The doctor recommended we avoid places with sick people. Germs? Sick people? He was talking about his dying mother as if she were a biological threat. Emily survived that crisis, but she was left very weak. One afternoon in March, when she was a little better, she asked me to take her home for a few hours. I want to cook one last time for my family, she told me. I want Michael to come eat the stew he liked when he was a boy. I prepared everything. I bought the ingredients. I helped her cook even though she could barely stand up. I set the table like in the old days. I called Michael. Today? It is just that Sarah and I already have plans. Can it not be another day? We ate alone. Emily cried over her son's empty plate. The last months were an emotional agony. Emily lost 60 pounds. Her skin turned yellowish. But her eyes kept looking for Michael every time someone entered the room. I sold shares of the companies to pay for experimental treatments in private clinics. I spent more than $200,000 on specialized doctors, imported medicines, anything that could give her one more day of life. Meanwhile, Michael sent WhatsApp messages asking how the situation with Mom was, as if it were a business report. The last Sunday of March, Emily asked me to take her to Mass at the church where we got married. She was so weak I had to carry her from the car to the pew. During the whole Mass, she prayed for Michael. Holy Virgin, I heard her whisper, help my son find the way back to us. Do not let resentment consume him when I am no longer here. After Mass, she told me something I will never forget. Robert, if one day Michael betrays you, do not stay silent. Dignity is defended, even against one's own blood. Emily died on Tuesday, April 12th, 2022 at 4:37 inches the afternoon. I was holding her hand when she breathed her last breath. Her last words were, "Take care of our son, but take better care of yourself." I called Michael immediately. Dad, I am in a meeting. What happened? Your mother just died. Michael, there was a long silence. Then, I am on my way. He arrived 2 hours later when Emily was already cold. He approached the body, touched her forehead once and said she looks at peace. He did not cry. He did not hug me. He did not say he loved her. That night, while I watched over Emily's body in our house, Michael left early. Sarah does not feel well because of the pregnancy. It was his excuse. Tomorrow we will organize everything for the funeral. I stayed alone with my dead wife, remembering 36 years of true love. I spoke to her as if she could still hear me. Emily, our son is no longer the boy we raised. He became a stranger. But I promise you I will honor your memory as you deserve. I did not know that the next day, that stranger was going to humiliate me in the cruelest way a son can humiliate his father. The day after Emily's death, I arrived at Street Michael Funeral Home at 8 in the morning to organize the wake. I had slept 2 hours. But my head was clear. I wanted my wife's funeral to be perfect, as she deserved after a life of sacrifices and unconditional love. I carried in my wallet the list we had made together months ago, when she still had strength to plan her own farewell. White flowers, soft music, let everyone who knew us come. She had written with her shaky handwriting, and let them feel at home, as our house always was. But when I arrived at the reception, the girl looked at me confused. Mr. Miller, your son was already here an hour ago. He already organized everything. I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. What do you mean he already organized everything? I am Emily's husband. I am the one who must make these decisions. The nervous girl showed me a folder full of signed papers. Sir, it says here that Michael Miller is the legal responsible party for the funeral arrangements. He brought documents that accredit him as executor of the will, documents that I had never seen in my life. Michael arrived half an hour later, accompanied by Sarah and an older man in an expensive suit I did not know. Dad, let me introduce you to Mr. Henderson, our family lawyer. Our lawyer? I had been working with George Martin for 30 years. My trusted lawyer. Since when did Michael have his own lawyers for family matters? Mr. Miller, Henderson told me with a fake smile. We understand you are going through a very difficult time. That is why your son took charge of all the paperwork to save you the stress. Stress, as if organizing my wife's funeral were an administrative nuisance. Michael, I want to review all the arrangements. Your mother had specific ideas about how she wanted her farewell. My son looked at me with a feigned patience that infuriated me. Dad, everything is already decided. I hired the best funeral home, the best service, the best flowers. Sarah took care of the aesthetic details. Sarah, the woman who barely knew Emily, had taken care of the details of her funeral. And the white flowers she wanted? I asked. We changed to purple orchids. Sarah answered with a smile. They are more elegant for a ceremony of this category. As if Emily's funeral were a social event that had to be classified according to class standards. Your mother hated purple orchids, I told Michael. She always said they looked like artificial flowers. Michael sighed as if I were a whimsical child. Dad, Mom can no longer give an opinion. We have to make the best decisions to honor her memory. We, as if I were not part of that we. As if 36 years of marriage did not give me the right to decide how to say goodbye to my own wife. The worst came when I reviewed the guest list. They had eliminated half the people Emily considered important, her co-workers from the 80s, the neighbors who helped her when Michael was little, the workers from my companies who had known her for decades. These people do not fit the profile of the event, explained Sarah. We want it to be a distinguished ceremony, not a neighborhood gathering. Distinguished. Emily, the most distinguished woman I knew in my life, but not for her money, but for her heart, reduced to social class criteria by a snob daughter-in-law. When I protested, Lawyer Henderson intervened. Mr. Miller, legally your son has authority to make these decisions. Your wife modified her will last year and named him sole executor of her affairs. That was impossible. Emily and I had made our wills together with George Martin in 2020. We had never modified them. I want to see those documents, I demanded. Of course, said Henderson, but they are in the process of legalization. You will have them in a few days after the funeral, when it no longer mattered. If you are listening to my story, please tell me in the comments where you are watching us from. Sometimes knowing there are people in the world who listen to me gives me strength to continue, because what I am about to tell you is the hardest thing I have lived. And I need to feel that someone understands the pain felt when your own family betrays you at the most vulnerable moment of your life. That afternoon, Emily's friends started calling me confused. Robert, why are you not organizing the funeral? Linda asked me. Why does your name not appear on the invitation? I had to explain 20 times that my son had taken charge of everything. And you agree? Asked Mark, my trusted manager. I did not agree with anything. But I did not know how to explain that I felt like a stranger in my own tragedy, as if I were a secondary actor in the most important play of my life. That night, Sarah chose the most expensive coffin in the catalog, imported mahogany with bronze fittings lined in Italian silk. It is what Mrs. Emily deserves, she said. But I knew it was to impress people, to show the economic level of the family. Emily would have hated that ostentation. She always said, Robert, when I die, do not spend money on luxuries. Better give it to someone who needs it. But Sarah did not know Emily. She only knew the version she had invented in her head, the low-class mother-in-law that had to be improved posthumously. Before leaving the funeral home, I tried once more to talk to Michael alone. Son, I know you are hurt by your mother's death, but this is not right. I am her husband. I have the right to participate in the decisions. Michael looked at me with a coldness I had never seen in his eyes. Dad, Mom and I talked a lot in the last few months. She told me things. Things about you two, about your marriage, about how she really felt. I felt the ground move under my feet. What things? Things that are going to hurt you a lot if you hear them here. In front of all these people. It was a threat. My own son was threatening me. That night I returned to my empty house. With a broken heart and a mind full of questions I did not have the courage to answer. The house still smelled of Emily's medicines, of the flowers the neighbors had brought, of that mixture of sadness and love that remains when someone very dear leaves forever. I sat in the armchair where Emily and I had watched so many movies together, where she knitted while I reviewed construction plans, where we had planned our dreams for 36 years. On the dining room table were still the pills she would no longer need, the half-empty glass of water, the notebook where she wrote down things she wanted to tell me when she had strength to talk. I opened that notebook with trembling hands and found something that broke my soul. Robert, if something happens to me, take care of Michael, but do not allow him to disrespect you. Dignity is the only thing no one can take from you if you do not allow it. You taught me that when we were young and poor but proud. Emily had written that barely 2 weeks before dying, when we still hoped Michael would react and return to being the loving son we had raised. She had sensed that something like this could happen. She had seen in our son his eyes that coldness I refused to recognize. I was reading her notes when the phone rang. It was 11:30 at night. It was Michael. Dad, we need to talk about tomorrow. His voice sounded different, more confident, like when he spoke with suppliers or difficult clients. What is wrong, son? Is there a problem with the arrangements? Yes, there is a problem. We have decided it is better if you do not come to the wake tomorrow. The words fell like stones on my head. What do you mean, do not come? What do you mean, do not come to my own wife's funeral? Michael, I do not understand. What are you talking about? Dad, Sarah and I have been talking to the psychologist who attends families in mourning. He explained to us that sometimes pain can make people act irrationally, say hurtful things without thinking. Psychologist? What psychologist? Since when did Michael consult psychologists without telling me anything? Son, I do not know what psychologist you are talking about, but I am perfectly fine. I just want to say goodbye to your mother as she deserves. Dad, but that is the problem. You are not well. We have noticed it in the last few months. Your erratic behavior, your exaggerated reactions, the way you treat Sarah when she comes to visit you. Erratic behavior, exaggerated reactions. What was my son talking about? The only reactions I had were of pain seeing Emily dying and of sadness because he did not come to visit her. Michael, I do not know what they have told you, but I have never treated Sarah badly. On the contrary, I have always been respectful to her, even when she has been rude to your mother. You see, Dad? That is exactly what I am saying. Sarah has never been rude to Mom. You have a distorted perception of reality. Distorted perception? Was my son telling me I was crazy? Michael, listen to me well. I am your father, and I am Emily's husband. Tomorrow I am going to be at that wake. Whether you or Sarah like it or not, it is my right and my obligation. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Then I heard Sarah's voice in the background, whispering something I could not understand. Dad, said Michael when he returned to the phone, if you come tomorrow, you are going to make a scene. You are going to ruin the ceremony. You are going to disrespect Mama's memory. Disrespect? Me, who had dedicated the last months of my life to caring for her day and night. Was I going to disrespect her? What do you mean I cannot enter? She is my wife. Michael, it was no longer a conversation between father and son. It was a hostile negotiation between enemies. Ex-wife, Dad, Mom divorced you mentally years ago. Those words went through me like bullets. What are you saying? Your mother and I were married and in love until the last day of her life. That is what you believe, Dad. But Mom told me many things in these last months. She told me how unhappy she had been, how controlling you were, how much she regretted having sacrificed her life for you. It was impossible. Emily had never said those things. Emily had never thought those things. Then I clearly heard Sarah's voice screaming in the background. Do not let that bitter old man come. Let him stay in his house crying alone. And worst of all, Michael did not silence her. He did not tell her to respect his father. He did not defend my dignity. He just stayed silent while his wife insulted me from the other end of the phone. "Did you hear that, Michael? Are you going to allow your wife to speak to me like that?" "Dad, Sarah is pregnant and is very sensitive. Besides, she is also hurt by Mom's death. They loved each other very much." Lie. Sarah barely tolerated Emily. But my son preferred his wife, his version, to the reality he had lived for years. "Michael, I am going to tell you one more time. Tomorrow I am going to be at that wake. You can put the guards you want. You can invent the excuses you can think of. But I am going to say goodbye to my wife." I hung up the phone without waiting for his answer. My hands shook with rage, with pain. From a disappointment so deep it was hard for me to breathe. I stayed awake all night looking at photos of Emily, reading the love letters she had written to me from the hospital. "Robert, you are the kindest man I have known. Take care of our son, but take better care of yourself." How could I take care of a son who had declared war on me? At 4 in the morning I found a letter Emily had hidden in my desk. The handwriting was shaky, but the message was clear. "My love, if you are reading this, it is because I am no longer with you. I want you to know that these 36 years were the happiest of my life. You were the perfect husband, the father our son needed, the man any woman would dream of having by her side. If one day someone tries to convince you otherwise, do not believe them. Our love was real. It was pure. It was forever." I cried over that letter until the sun came up. Emily had known something like this could happen. That is why she had left me that letter, so I would remember the truth when lies tried to confuse me. At 6 in the morning I took a shower. I put on the black suit Emily had ironed for me for the last time. I took the white roses from the garden and drove to Street Michael Funeral Home. It did not matter what Michael had planned. It did not matter how many guards he had put. I was going to say goodbye to my wife. I was going to keep the promise I had made 36 years ago, to be with her until death do us part, and if they had to take me out by force, at least the whole world would see who the true villain in this story was. At least people would know that Robert Miller had fought until the end for the love of his life. When I arrived at Street Michael Funeral Home that morning, my heart sank seeing that there were indeed 2 security guards standing at the main entrance, like soldiers guarding a bank. They were big men, serious, with those black uniforms and earpieces used by the most expensive private security companies in Chicago. For a moment I thought maybe they were to protect some politician or important businessman who had come to the wake. But when I approached with my white roses in hand and saw how they looked at me, I knew immediately they were there for me. My own son had hired security guards to prevent me from entering my own wife's funeral. The humiliation was complete, but I still did not know how far the betrayal reached. "Good morning, sir," the tallest one told me when I approached the door. His voice was professional, but firm, like someone used to dealing with difficult situations. "Where are you heading?" "I am here for the wake of my wife, Emily Miller," I answered him, trying to maintain dignity even though my voice was trembling. "I am Robert Miller, her husband." The man exchanged a look with his partner and then took a folded paper out of the inside pocket of his jacket. He unfolded it slowly, as if it were a court order. "I am very sorry, Mr. Miller, but you cannot enter. It is a family order." Those words hit me like a punch in the stomach. "What do you mean I cannot enter? We have been married for 36 years. I am Emily's husband." My voice began to raise in pitch, not from aggression, but from desperation. The guard maintained his professionalism, but I could see in his eyes that the situation made him uncomfortable. "Sir, we understand your pain, but we have specific orders from Mr. Michael Miller, son of the deceased lady. He hired us to avoid altercations during the ceremony." Altercations? What altercations could a 68-year-old man cause who just wanted to say goodbye to his dead wife? What image had Michael painted of me to justify this public humiliation? At that moment, people we knew started arriving. The Johnsons, our lifelong friends, Mr. Robinson, my partner in the second company, the Smith sisters, who had been friends with Emily since youth, workers from my construction companies who had known her for decades. They all saw me standing there, arguing with the security guards, as if I were a dangerous intruder. Their faces changed when they realized what was happening. Some looked down ashamed, others greeted me with pity. as if I were a victim of some additional tragedy. Mr. Robinson approached, confused. "Robert, what is happening here?" I did not know what to answer him without sounding crazy. It was then that Mary, Emily's younger sister, came out of the funeral home crying. Mary had been like a sister to me for all these years. Michael's favorite aunt, the one who always defended our family union. When she saw me out there with the guards, her face of surprise broke my heart. "Robert, why are you out here? Why are you not inside with Emily? They will not let me in, Mary. Michael put guards so I cannot say goodbye to my wife." Mary stood mute for a few seconds, as if she could not process what she had just heard. "That is impossible, Robert. It must be a misunderstanding." But Mary went inside to look for explanations and returned 20 minutes later with red eyes and an expression I had never seen on her. "Robert," she told me with a broken voice, "Michael told me that you had mistreated Emily during the last years. That is why she did not want to see you in her last days, that she had specifically asked that you not come to the funeral." The world stopped around me. Mistreated? I had mistreated Emily, the woman who was the love of my life, for whom I sold shares to pay for her treatments, whom I cared for day and night for months. Mary, you know that is a lie. You saw how I cared for Emily until the last day. Robert, I do not know what to believe. Mary answered me, and I could see in her eyes she was already doubting me. Michael showed me WhatsApp messages where Emily complained about you. He told me she had spoken to a psychologist because she felt emotionally abused. WhatsApp messages? Psychologist? When had Emily had time to write messages complaining about me? If I was with her 24 hours a day? Mary, that is impossible. Emily and I had no problems in our marriage. On the contrary, we were more united than ever during her illness. But I could already see that the seed of doubt had been planted in Mary's mind, as it had probably been planted in the mind of the whole family. Then, I understood the full dimension of my son's betrayal. He had not only kept me away from Emily's funeral, he had not only taken control of all decisions without consulting me, he had built a complete narrative where I was the villain of the story. He had convinced all our acquaintances that I was an abusive old man who had made his wife suffer for years. He had destroyed 36 years of a respectable marriage with calculated lies and fabricated proof, and worst of all, he had used Emily's death as the perfect opportunity to execute his plan without her being able to defend me. Mary, I told her with all the dignity I had left, you have known Emily since she was a child. You have come to our house thousands of times for 36 years. Did you ever in all that time see any sign that I mistreated her? Did you ever see her sad, scared, or unhappy with me? Mary stood thinking for a few seconds, and for a moment I saw in her eyes a glimmer of truth. No, Robert, I never saw anything like that. I always thought you had the most solid marriage I knew. Then trust what you saw for 36 years, not what Michael says happened in the last few months. But it was already too late. Doubt had been sown, and doubts grow faster than the truth. At that moment, a black car arrived from which Michael and Sarah got out, dressed in mourning but with an attitude that did not seem like pain but triumph. Sarah wore a very expensive black dress and dark sunglasses, as if she were an actress arriving at a premiere. Michael wore a suit I had paid for, and when he saw me out there with the guards, his expression was not of surprise. It was of satisfaction, as if everything were going exactly as he had planned. He approached me with that fake smile he had perfected in recent years, that smile he used with difficult clients or problematic suppliers. "Dad," he told me with a theatrically sad voice, "we already talked about this last night. We do not want problems here. Mom would not have wanted you to make a scene at her funeral." A scene? Wanting to say goodbye to my wife was making a scene? Sarah stayed a few meters away, but I could see she was smiling behind her dark glasses. A small smile, cruel, of someone who was enjoying every second of my humiliation. "Michael," I told him with the little dignity I had left, "this is not right. I am her husband. I have the right to be here. You no longer have rights over Mom, Dad. Those rights ended when you decided to make her life impossible in her last months. It was the perfect lie, told in public, in front of all our acquaintances, and I had no way to defend myself without seeming exactly what he said I was, an irrational and problematic old man. 2 weeks after Emily's funeral, When I still woke up every morning waiting to hear her voice calling me from the kitchen, I received a call I never expected. It was Michael. His voice sounded different. Softer. Almost like the boy who used to apologize to me when he broke something playing football in the yard. "Dad, can we talk?" Sarah and I have been thinking a lot about what happened the day of the funeral. For a moment, my heart filled with a desperate hope. Maybe my son had reflected. Maybe he had realized the cruelty of what he had done. Maybe the pain of losing his mother had made him rethink the importance of family. "Of course, son. Whenever you want. My house is always open for you. Better we meet at the office, Dad. On neutral ground. Neutral ground." As if my own house were enemy territory. As if the place where he had grown up, where Emily had raised him with so much love, was now a battlefield from which one had to protect oneself. But I accepted. After 2 weeks of pain and absolute solitude, any opportunity for reconciliation with my son was worth it. "When is good for you?" I asked him, with a voice that sounded pathetically hopeful even to my own ears. "Tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon, at the main office of Miller Construction, the office I had built brick by brick, where he had played as a child while I worked on Saturdays, where Emily came to bring us homemade lunch on Sundays when we had urgent projects." That night I slept better than I had slept since Emily's death. For the first time in weeks I allowed myself to imagine that maybe everything had been a terrible misunderstanding, an exaggerated reaction from the pain of loss. Maybe Michael had been so desperate to prove he could handle the situation that he had made wrong decisions. Maybe Sarah, in her pregnancy and her pain, had negatively influenced his decisions. I woke up early, bathed carefully, put on the blue suit Emily always said made me look distinguished. I even cut my hair at the barber shop where I had gone for 20 years. As if I were going to an important date, I wanted to look like the father Michael could respect, like the grandfather his unborn son deserved to know. I arrived at the office 15 minutes before the agreed time. The building I had built in the 90s looked exactly the same. The sign Miller Construction shining under the afternoon sun. The garden Emily had designed blooming with her favorite plants. The elegant but not ostentatious reception that reflected our values of hard work and deserved success. I waited in my old office, surrounded by the diplomas and awards I had accumulated during 30 years of honest construction. On the walls were photos of our most important projects, the housing complex for middle-class families, the office building that had been my first big success, the elementary school we built non-profit in the neighborhood where Emily had grown up. Each photo told the story of a life dedicated to building not only buildings, but a family legacy. Michael arrived exactly at 3, accompanied by Sarah and, to my surprise, the same lawyer who had appeared at the funeral, Mr. Henderson. Sarah looked radiant despite the mourning, with an elegant black dress that accentuated her 4-month pregnancy. She had that smile I had learned to recognize, the smile of someone who is about to get what they want. Michael hugged me, and, for a second, I felt I was getting my son back. His hug was genuine, warm, like the hugs he gave me when he came back from college, full of plans and dreams. "Dad, I'm very sorry for everything that happened. I think we all reacted badly because of the pain." Those words were like fresh water for my thirsty soul. "Sarah thinks we should give you a chance," continued Michael. And, for the first time in months, my daughter-in-law looked at me without contempt. "We have reflected a lot on what Mom would have wanted for our family." Mom. It was the first time Sarah referred to Emily as Mom, instead of Mrs. Emily, or simply ignoring her existence. "We know these months have been very hard for you, Dad. Losing the partner of a lifetime is not easy at any age." His voice sounded mature, understanding, like that of the responsible man I had always hoped he would become. "We want you to be part of our lives, to know your grandson when he is born. Let us continue being a family as Mom would have wanted." The tears came out without permission. For 2 weeks I had lived with the certainty that I had lost not only my wife, but also my son and the possibility of knowing my grandson. "Michael, you do not know how happy it makes me to hear that. Your mother would be so proud to see you mature, responsible, thinking of the family above any personal difference." Sarah approached and took my hand with a softness I had never known from her. "Mr. Miller," she told me, "I too have been thinking a lot. Maybe I judged some situations wrong. The pregnancy has me very sensitive, and the pain for the loss of Mrs. Emily confused me. It was the first time I heard her refer to Emily with respect. The first time she admitted having been wrong about something. We could be partners again, Dad. Like before when I was a boy and you took me to the sites to teach me the business. Michael approached the window from where one could see the city we had helped build with our projects. I remember when you explained to me that every building was like a family. It needed solid foundations, strong structure, and a lot of love to last forever. Those words went straight to my heart. It was exactly the philosophy I had taught him since he was little. The same one Emily supported when she saw me work until late planning every detail of our projects. But we need to make some legal changes first, he continued, to protect the family assets, especially now that the baby is coming. Lawyer Henderson opened his briefcase and took out a folder full of perfectly organized documents. Mr. Miller, he told me with the professional smile he had perfected during years of legal practice. We have prepared some documents that are going to facilitate the generational transition of the companies. It is something every successful business family must do eventually. The papers looked official, serious, full of legal terms I did not completely understand. But that sounded reasonable coming from a lawyer with Henderson as credentials. It is just a formality, Dad, Michael explained, but necessary so we can work together without bureaucratic complications. A temporary transfer of authority while we reorganize the business structure. Sign these documents today, Sarah told me with a smile that now seemed genuinely affectionate to me. And tomorrow we have dinner as a family. We can start planning how we want the relationship of our son with his grandfather to be. The word grandfather filled me with an emotion I had not felt since before Emily's illness. Finally, I was going to have a grandson. Finally, I was going to be able to continue the family legacy that had cost me so much work to build. I took the pen Henderson offered me without reading all the details. I trusted my son. I trusted that pain had taught us all how important family was. I signed every document with a trembling hand, not from nerves, but from emotion. Tomorrow at 8 o'clock sharp, Michael told me while putting away the papers. Sarah is going to cook that roasted chicken you like so much. That night I returned home feeling like a new man. For the first time since Emily's death, I could have dinner without crying over the empty plate. I called Mary to tell her Michael and I had reconciled, that I was going to be an active grandfather, that maybe everything about the funeral had been a terrible misunderstanding caused by pain. I am very happy, Robert, she told me, although her voice sounded cautious. I hope this time everything goes well. I fell asleep hugging Emily's pillow, whispering to her that our son had reconsidered, that we were going to be a family again, that our grandson was going to grow up knowing the love we two had built for 36 years. The next day I woke up early and bought flowers for Sarah, a gift for the baby on the way, a bottle of the wine we used to drink at family celebrations. But when I arrived at Michael's house at 8 o'clock sharp, no one opened the door. I called the phone. He did not answer. I rang the doorbell for an hour. The house was empty, dark, silent as a tomb. 3 days after having waited uselessly at the door of Michael's house, I managed to locate him at what had been my main office at Miller Construction. But when I arrived, the surprise was total. The sign no longer said Miller Construction. Now it said Miller & Associates, Real Estate Developments. My name had been relegated to a secondary mention in the company I had founded with my own hands, with the sweat of 30 years of work, with Emily's unconditional support during decades of shared sacrifices. The secretary who had known me for 15 years looked at me confused when I asked to see Michael. Mr. Miller, she told me with evident discomfort. Do you have an appointment? Mr. Michael is very busy reorganizing the directive structure. Appointment? Did I need an appointment to see my own son and the company I had built? Michael received me in what had been my office. But everything had changed. The diplomas and awards I had accumulated over 3 decades had been replaced by new certificates in the name of Michael Miller, CEO. The photos of our family projects had been replaced by renders of luxury real estate developments I had never seen. Even Emily's photo that had always been on my desk had disappeared, replaced by an image of Sarah in her wedding dress. My son was sitting behind the desk that had been mine for 20 years, reviewing papers with the concentration of someone managing an empire that had always been his. When I looked up, I did not see guilt in his eyes. I saw satisfaction. Dad, how is it going? Sorry, I could not see you sooner. But we have been reorganizing many things. His tone was professional, cordial, like the one he used with less important suppliers. There was no trace of the repentant son who had hugged me 3 days ago. So this was the plan from the beginning? I asked him, feeling rage and disappointment rising up my throat like bitter bile. The reconciliation, the apologies, the promise to dine as a family. Michael leaned back in his chair, with a tranquility that froze my blood. Dad, business is business. I had to make sure the transition was as efficient as possible. Mom would be proud to see how I am managing the family assets. Proud? Your mother would be proud to see you steal the company we built together. Would she be proud to see you lie to your own father? My voice was starting to break, not from sadness, but from a rage I had been holding back for weeks. Michael sighed, as if I were a difficult client who did not understand the conditions of a contract. Dad, this is not stealing. It is a normal generational transition. All family businesses go through this eventually. Founders get old, lose decision-making capacity, and the new generation takes control. Lose decision-making capacity? Me, who had managed 3 companies simultaneously for decades, who had navigated economic crises that would have sunk less experienced businessmen. At that moment, Sarah entered without knocking, as if she were the owner of the place. She wore an expensive maternity dress and a smile that no longer pretended to be kind. She approached the desk where Michael was sitting and put a possessive hand on his shoulder as if marking territory. Ah, the old man finally understood, she said with a crystalline laugh that hurt me more than any scream. There was no pretending in her voice. It was the genuine laugh of someone who had won a long and calculated war. We always knew you were a hindrance, Robert, an obstacle to the real growth of these companies. The casual way she pronounced my name, without the respect she had used during years of hypocrisy, showed me to what extent they had planned this humiliation. Sarah, I told her, trying to maintain some dignity, I received you and my family like a daughter. I respected you even when you treated Emily badly. Is this how you repay 30 years of consideration? Her laugh became stronger, more cruel, like a daughter. Please, Robert, you were always condescending to me. You always made me feel like I was lower class than you, as if I should be grateful for being accepted into your little middle-class world. Middle class. We had built an empire worth millions of dollars. We had given work to hundreds of families. We had contributed to the development of Chicago for decades. But for Sarah, we had never been enough, because our money smelled of honest work and not aristocratic inheritance. And you, Michael? I asked my son, hoping that at least he had the decency to feel some shame. Are you going to allow your wife to speak to me like that? Are you going to stay silent while she insults your family? Michael did not look up from the papers he was reviewing. He did not defend my dignity. He did not ask Sarah for respect. He simply kept working as if I were a problematic employee that had to be tolerated until finding a way to fire him. Dad, Sarah is right about some things. For years you kept these companies with a limited mentality. Small projects, small profits, small ambitions. The same ambitions that had paid for the most expensive university in Chicago. Trips through Europe, luxury cars. 30 years building this for you. I told him with a voice I no longer recognized as mine. And you kicked me out like a dog. Sarah laughed again. That laugh that would haunt me for years. Do not be dramatic, Dad, said Michael, finally looking at me with the feigned patience of someone explaining something obvious to a slow child. We are going to give you a pension. $500 a month. It is more than many retirees receive, and considering you no longer add value to operations, it is quite generous. $500? Was that the valuation my son made of 30 years of work, of a life dedicated to building his future? Emily and I spent more than that on an anniversary dinner. $500? I repeated, without being able to believe what I was hearing. Michael, these companies are worth more than $5 million. The bank accounts have more than $2 million in cash. The properties we have accumulated are worth another $3 million. And you offer me $500 a month as if it were a favor. Sarah stood up and walked to the window with that studied elegance she had perfected in her years of marriage to my son. Robert, those figures correspond to the past. We are in a new stage. Michael is restructuring everything with a vision of the future. It is no longer about how much things were worth when you managed them, but how much they are going to be worth when managed by someone with modern education and real connections. I got up from the chair, feeling humiliation weighing on my shoulders. like a physical burden. I looked at my son for what I knew would be the last time as father and son. His eyes were cold, calculating, completely alien to the man who had held him in his arms when he was a baby, who had taught him to ride a bike, who had worked 18 hours a day to give him all the opportunities he now used to destroy me. "You are going to remember this conversation all your life, Michael," I told him with a tranquility that surprised even me. "When you are old and look back, you are going to remember the day you betrayed the man who gave you everything." Michael did not even look up from his papers. "Goodbye, Dad. The pension documents will arrive by mail." I left that office. My office, knowing I had just lost not only my son, but also my life as work. But while I walked to my car, something strange started happening in my chest. Sadness and humiliation began to transform into something colder, more dangerous. Michael thought he had defeated me completely. Sarah thought she had achieved everything she wanted. Both believed Robert Miller was a harmless old man they could trample without consequences. But there was something they did not know. Something Emily and I had planned years ago, when we still hoped our son had honor. That night, when I got home, I would make a call that would change everything. A call that was going to teach them what it meant to betray a man who had built an empire not only with bricks, but with intelligence and foresight. That night I arrived at my empty house with a broken heart, but a mind clearer than it had been in weeks. I poured myself a good whiskey, from the bottle Emily and I kept for special occasions, and I sat in the study where I used to review the most important contracts of our companies. At that same desk, 5 years ago, Emily and I had made a decision that at that moment seemed exaggerated, almost paranoid. She had told me one night after a particularly tense dinner with Michael and Sarah, "I have a bad feeling about our son. He is changing and not for the good. I think we should protect ourselves." I had thought it was an exaggerated reaction of a worried mother. Now I understood Emily had seen what I refused to accept, that we were raising a stranger. I looked in the safe for the sealed envelope I had not opened in 5 years. Inside were all the documents of the Emily plan, as we had jokingly called it, never imagining that one day we would actually have to use it. Emily had insisted on creating an asset protection system that kept a significant part of our assets safe in case something went wrong with the family. "It is not about distrusting Michael," she had explained. "It is about protecting the fruit of our work so it is always used with the values we taught him." We had hired the best financial lawyer in Chicago, George Martin, a man of honor who understood the importance of discretion and loyalty. I picked up the phone with trembling hands and dialed the number I knew by heart. It was 11 at night, but George had always told me to call him at any time if I needed to activate the Emily plan. "George, it is Robert. It is time to execute the Emily plan." There was a silence on the other end of the line, and then the deep voice of my trusted lawyer. "Robert, are you completely sure, once we activate this, there is no turning back? Have things really gone that far?" I told him everything. The humiliation at the funeral, the documents they made me sign under deception, the way Michael and Sarah had kicked me out of my own company as if I were trash. "Okay, Robert. Emily warned me this could happen. I have everything prepared. Tomorrow, first thing we start." What Michael never knew is that during the last 10 years, following George's advice, we had kept secret bank accounts in Switzerland and Luxembourg. It was nothing illegal. Of course, they were legitimate investments declared to the IRS, but structured through shell companies that only Emily, George, and I knew about, while Michael managed the daily operations of the construction companies with the operating accounts he knew. The true family wealth was protected in financial instruments he did not even know existed. More than $15 million in stocks, bonds, and fixed-term deposits we had accumulated during decades of smart work and careful planning. "George, cancel all Michael is access to the operating accounts of the 3 companies. Activate the asset protection clauses we established." My lawyer already had everything ready. For years, the companies had operated with a complex legal structure, where Michael had authority for daily decisions and project management, but I maintained final control over the main finances through a series of holding companies he was completely unaware of. The documents he had made me sign under deception gave him control of the operating companies, but he had no idea those companies depended completely on loans and guarantees I controlled from the parent companies. And George, I continued, feeling a strange calm I had not experienced in weeks. Activate the immediate revocation clause, too. I want Michael to lose access to all credit lines tomorrow, all bank guarantees, all operating funds. George whistled softly on the other end of the phone. Robert, that is going to paralyze the 3 companies in 24 hours. Are you sure you want to go that far? I am sure, George. My son treated me like an enemy. Now he is going to know what it feels like to have a real enemy. Emily had taught me that the most effective revenge is not the one that hurts the most, but the one that teaches the most. And Michael was going to learn a lesson he would never forget. At 6 in the morning the next day, the most calculated operation of my life began. The banks received orders to immediately suspend all credit lines of Michael's companies. Suppliers who had not collected invoices from recent months received legal notifications demanding immediate payments. Employees who had worked overtime during recent projects were informed that their salaries were delayed due to temporary cash flow problems. The accounts Michael thought he controlled were frozen by routine audits, which could last weeks. In less than 12 hours, my son went from feeling like the owner of an empire to discovering he was the manager of 3 bankrupt companies. The first call came at 3 in the afternoon. It was Michael. And for the first time in years, his voice sounded desperate. Dad, what is happening? The banks say the accounts are blocked. Suppliers are demanding payments we cannot make. Employees are asking for their salaries. His voice had that note of panic I remembered from when he was a child and had broken something valuable. What is happening, Michael? What is happening is what Emily and I planned years ago. When we still had hope, our son was a man of honor. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Then, what are you talking about, Dad? What plan? The plan we made when we realized we were raising a stranger. Dad, please, we can solve this. We can talk like adults. Now, yes. He sounded like the child who used to apologize when he broke something playing football in the yard. Talk like adults. Like we talked when you kicked me out of my wife's funeral. Like we talked when you stole my company under deception. Like we talked when your wife insulted me in my own office. Michael started crying on the other end of the phone. It was the first time I heard him cry since he was 12. Dad, Sarah is pregnant. We have responsibilities. You cannot destroy everything for a family fight. A family fight? They had destroyed my dignity. They had trampled on Emily's memory. They had turned 30 years of work into a public humiliation. Michael, listen to me well, because I am going to tell you only once. Over the next few days, you are going to discover you know nothing about the companies you thought you controlled. You are going to discover you understand nothing about the wealth you thought you had inherited. And you are going to discover that betraying your family has consequences that go far beyond what your limited mind can imagine. I hung up the phone and poured myself another whiskey. Outside, Chicago went on with its normal life, without knowing that in a house in the suburbs, a 68-year-old man had just declared war on his own son, a war that had begun with humiliation and tears, but would end with justice and recovered dignity. That night, for the first time since Emily's death, I slept deeply. I dreamed of my young wife, of the day we met in that small office where she worked as a secretary. In the dream, she smiled at me and said, Robert, I always knew you were a man of honor. Do not let anyone, not even our son, make you forget who you are. I woke up with a mental clarity I had not felt in months. Michael had made the biggest mistake of his life. He had underestimated the man who had created him, who had built an empire from nothing, who had survived economic crises that would have destroyed less intelligent businessmen. Now he was going to learn that experience and patience always defeat arrogance and haste, and Sarah was going to discover she had bet on the wrong horse in this race. 6 months after that call that changed everything, I was standing in front of the land where we were going to build the first 50 houses of the Emily Miller Foundation. It was a 5-acre lot, the same neighborhood where Emily had grown up in a humble house with her working parents. The morning sun illuminated the empty space that would soon be filled with children as laughter, with families that would finally have a decent home, with real hope for people who had worked all their lives without being able to access their own home. With the $25 million I had kept protected from my son as greed, I had created the most ambitious foundation in the state in the social housing sector. Every dollar Michael thought he was going to inherit would turn into bricks and hope for families who really deserved it. Next to me was George Martin, my trusted lawyer. reviewing the final plans of the project. Robert, he told me with that satisfied smile reserved for his most elegant legal triumphs, I think Emily would be proud of what you are doing. Turning Michael's betrayal into hope for 50 families is the most poetic revenge I have seen in 30 years of career. He was right. Every house we built would be a monument to Emily's memory, but also a lesson for my son about what it really means to honor parents. While he fell into ruin due to his own greed, I was building a legacy that would last generations. The first benefited families had already been selected through a rigorous process Emily would have completely approved. They were working families of Chicago. A single nurse with 2 children who had been living in a tiny apartment for 10 years. A couple of teachers who paid more than 60% of their income in rent. A widowed bricklayer with 3 daughters who had lost his house during the 2008 economic crisis. Honest people who worked hard, but the real estate market had left without opportunities. Every family that receives a house is going to know Emily's story. I told the architects and social workers managing the project. They are going to know this house is possible because of the love of an extraordinary woman and the honor of a man who did not let himself be defeated by betrayal. While we planned the foundation, Michael had fallen into bankruptcy in record time, without access to the real accounts, without the bank guarantees I controlled, without understanding the complex financial structure that sustained the companies. He had tried to manage 3 construction companies with the experience of a child playing with Lego blocks. The project stopped. Employees left to look for work in other companies. Suppliers sued for late payments. In 6 months, the companies I had built for 30 years collapsed like houses of cards under my son's incompetent management. Sarah, who had believed she married a millionaire, discovered she had bet her future on a man who did not even know how to read a balance sheet. The first time I saw Michael after that call was downtown, 3 months after the collapse of his companies. He was sitting on a bench, wearing clothes I recognized as what he used to work on sites when he was young, but now wrinkled and stained. He had a cap on the ground with some coins and a cardboard sign that said, "Looking for work. I have construction experience." The long and unkempt beard, the sunken eyes, the dirty hands. It was hard to recognize in that man the arrogant executive who had kicked me out of my own office a few months ago. I approached slowly, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and satisfaction. "Michael," I said softly. When he looked up and saw me, his eyes filled with tears immediately. "Dad," he told me with a broken voice I had not heard since he was a child. "Forgive me. Please, forgive me. I did not know what I was doing." He stood up clumsily, and for a moment I thought he was going to hug me, as he did when he was little and had done something bad. But I did not do it, not because I did not feel love for him, but because some lessons are only learned when they hurt enough. "Where is Sarah?" I asked him. "She left when the money ran out. She took the baby. She said she could not raise a son with a loser." The baby, my grandson, who would never know his grandfather because of his parents' greed. I took out my wallet and gave him $200. "This is more than you offered me when you kicked me out of my company, son." Michael took the money with trembling hands. "Dad, is there any way to fix this? Any way we can go back to being a family?" I looked at him for a few seconds, seeing in his eyes the genuine desperation of someone who had lost everything due to his own stupidity. "Michael, there are things that cannot be fixed. There are betrayals that cannot be forgiven. You decided I was worth nothing. Now you have to live with the consequences of that decision." His tears fell on the sidewalk while tourists passed us by, without understanding the drama unfolding between a father and a son. "But I am going to tell you something," I continued, "and I want you to remember it the rest of your life. The money you thought you were going to inherit is building houses for people who really deserve it. Every brick of those houses bears your mother's name. Every family smiling in those homes is my sweetest revenge." Michael put his hands to his face and cried like he had not cried since he was a child. "Dad, Mom would not have wanted this. She would have wanted us to be a family." "You are right, Michael. Your mother would have wanted us to be a family. But you decided being rich was more important than being her son. Now live with that decision." I walked away without looking back, leaving him crying on that bench. Today, 1 year after Emily's death, the Emily Miller Foundation has built 200 houses in 4 neighborhoods of Chicago. Every house has a plaque that says, "Built with love in memory of Emily Miller, 19612022." An extraordinary woman who believed in the dignity of work and the power of true love. Children play in the yards we designed, thinking of the afternoons Emily and I spent watching Michael run through our garden. Mothers hang clothes on the lines we installed, remembering the mornings Emily sang while hanging our clothes in the sun. Every detail of those houses is full of happy memories, of true love, of the life we built together for 36 years. Michael lives in a municipal shelter. Sometimes I get information about him through acquaintances, that he is working temporary jobs, that he is trying to quit alcohol, that he asks about me, but dares not approach. Sarah married an older businessman, a man who can give her the luxury life she always wanted. My grandson will grow up calling another man dad, without ever knowing he had a grandfather who would have given his life for him. There are nights it hurts to think about that my blood is growing up without knowing the stories Emily and I would have shared with him. But then I remember the faces of the children playing in the foundation houses, and I understand some losses are necessary for bigger things to be born. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing, if the justice I sought was too severe, if Emily would have approved the way I handled our son as betrayal. But then I see the families smiling in their new houses. I read the thank you letters I receive every week. I walk through neighborhoods where before there was poverty, and now there is hope. And I know Emily would be proud. Every brick is a prayer. Every house is a miracle. Every happy family is proof that true love never dies. It only transforms. Michael chose greed over family. I chose honor over blood. And although it hurts, I know I made the right decision. Today I am 69 years old and I have learned something that hurts. But it is true. Sometimes blood family disappoints us. But the family we choose, the family we build with our values and our actions, that family never betrays us. The 200 families living in the Emily Foundation houses are my true descendants. The children growing up in those yards are my true grandchildren. The mothers who bless me when I pass through their neighborhoods are my true daughters. Michael lost a father, but I gained a whole family of people who understand the value of honest work and true love. What would you have done in my place? Would you have forgiven a son who humiliated you at the most painful moment of your life? Or would you have sought justice, even if it hurt in the soul? If this story moved something inside you, tell us your opinion in the comments, like if you believe justice arrived as it had to arrive. And subscribe, because every day there is a new story that could change your life. Stories of common people facing extraordinary betrayals and finding the strength to move forward.